So far we have been getting data for courses from the array declared inside web.php file, and in this lesson we're finally going to move this data into the database and read it from there. In the first lesson of this series, we have already established connection with MySQL database. There we have installed database itself and also installed a graphical client to manage data in the database. So if you don't have the database connection configured yet, please refer to the first lesson of this series. I am using DB Engine application to start MySQL database server, and then inside Table Plus client I have configured connection to that MySQL server, so we can open up this database server and choose the database called Laravel Watch. This is the database that we have created in one of the previous lessons for this project. As we can see, this database already has some data, and that is because we have already ran command that executes default Laravel migrations. And all these default tables have been created by running those default migrations. And in this lesson we're going to create our first migration that is going to create courses table, because we need to have some place to store the data for courses. So let's switch back to the terminal and run the following command. In the project root php artisan make migration. Here we have to specify the name for our migration. According to some conventions, if migration contains the logic to create table, we're calling it in the following way: create underscore, followed by the resource name that we're creating this migration for, followed by underscore table. And after pressing enter, we can see that migration file has been created at the following address. Let's open up this migration file in the editor and take a look at its content. So each migration file by default contains method up, where we are describing structure of the table, and this method will be executed once we're gonna run migrations. But also there is down method. This method will be called once we're going to roll back already executed migrations, and how to do this we're going to see later on. So first of all, let's just define the table structure for courses. In here we already have a couple of default columns, such as ID, as well as a few additional columns called created at and updated at, which will be created by calling this timestamps method. And we're going to learn what these columns are for in the future lessons. But for now, I'm going to add a couple of additional columns into this table to store course data. Every course will have the title, which will be string, and by calling method default, we can also specify a default value for this column for cases where we will not assign any value to this column directly. I'm going to use course string as a default value. The next column will be called description. This column will have text type that is going to store some larger pieces of text. And to make some column nullable, meaning that this column might not have any value, we can call method nullable, like so. Next column will store numeric values, lessons count, and we are declaring this column by using integer method. And as a default value for this column, we're going to use 21. For now it does not matter much which default values we're assigning here. Later on we're going to change this logic, but for now this will be enough to demonstrate how migrations work. And finally, I'm going to add one more column to store the duration of the course. There will be a string, and as a default value we're specifying the following string. And if you want to learn more which methods are available to create columns of different types, you can refer to Laravel documentation, where there will be a huge list of all available column types that you can create by using Laravel Migrations API. For example, here is the string method that we used for our migration, and we can also see an example of usage. So now let's actually remove all these default tables, and we can do it by rolling back all migrations. So to roll back all already executed migrations, we'll have to run the command php artisan migrate column reset. And as you can see, 3 migrations have been reset. That means that all the tables created by those migrations will be removed from the database. And indeed, if we're going to refresh interface of the Table Plus on macOS, we can do so by pressing command R, we're going to see only one table, migrations. And this is the table that actually keeps track of all executed migrations. In this case, it does not have any records because we have just rolled back all executed migrations. So none of the migrations have been run yet. But the moment we're going to execute migrate command in the project root, that is going to execute all available migrations in the project, including that migration for courses table that we have just created. Let's take a look. And there we go, this time we can see that 4 migrations have been executed, including create courses table migration. And the migrations table contains 4 records. Each record stores information about each migration executed. And among all of these tables, we can see our newly created table called courses, with the structure that we have defined previously. So now I'm going to quickly populate this table with some dummy data in order to test it out. For now, we can assign absolutely any values into those columns. And then I'm going to duplicate this first row a couple more times and assign different course titles just to differentiate these records. And after we are done, we have to press Command S to commit these changes and actually store this data if you are using Table Plus client. So now we are ready to read this data from the database. Let's go back to web.php and remove this array with course data. We no longer need it since we're going to read all the data from the database. So in the first route handler, let's write the SQL statement to read the data from the courses table. We're doing so by using db class and calling method select. As the first argument, this method takes the SQL select statement that we are about to execute. So I'm gonna say that I'd like to get all the data from the courses table, like this. And before proceeding further, let's take a look what this courses variable is going to contain. I'm going to print it out in the browser. And there we go, we got an array with 4 records, as many records as we currently have in the courses table. And each record in here contains data for a particular course from the courses table. So we can pass this array of courses into the template just like before. And by the way, if associative array with data contains the keys that have the same name as variable names, we can actually use an alternate notation to create such associative array by using compact function like this. And this way, the associative array will be created with only one key called courses, and as a value it is going to use the variable with the name courses. And eventually this courses array is going to end up in the main page template, from where it is going to be passed into courses component, in which we are iterating over this array of data and rendering individual courses by using this course component. But if we'll take a look in the browser, we're going to see the following error. That is because each course now is an object instead of an array. So we have to change the notation to properly refer to the object fields. Instead of using bracket notation to fetch individual keys of array, we're going to use arrow syntax to refer to individual fields of an object. We're doing so for every field in this component. Now let's try it out one more time. And in this case, as you can see, all the course data have been shown on the main page. But if we'll switch over to the courses page, we'll still see an error. That is because courses variable is not available yet in the route handler of this page. So let's switch back to web.php and modify the route for the courses page. So basically this route handler is going to contain the same logic as the previous one. We're going to fetch all the courses from the courses table first, and then pass this array of courses to the courses template. And as you can see, it has fixed our problem on the courses page. There is one more problem left on the individual course page. In this case, it is saying that undefined variable courses. So let's go back to the route handler that is responsible for rendering individual course page. In here, we're going to write a little bit different SQL statement in order to fetch only one course by ID. So I'm going to use method called select1. Here let's select all the columns from the courses table, but we'll add restriction in here. We only have to get the one row where an identifier of the course will be the identifier that we have received from the route segment called ID as a dynamic value. So in here I'm going to use placeholder called ID, and Laravel is going to inject proper value into this placeholder automatically if we're going to supply a second argument. This argument will be an associative array of keys that correspond to placeholder values. In this case, we have only one placeholder called ID, and we are using that identifier that we have received into this route closure as a parameter, like this. So let's take a look what data we're going to get by executing the following query. I'm going to print out the course variable in here. And before checking the result in the browser, let's actually use the same approach to pass data into the view by using compact function, just like we have done in the previous route callback. And in this third route handler, we can actually use this compact function twice when we are supplying placeholder data to the query right here, as well as where we are passing down fetched data to the view right here. And there we go. In the browser, we're seeing that on the course page, we're getting the data for the individual course with the identifier that we have specified in the address line. So at the end, let's just remove that dd statement and try to fetch data of the third course. We're specifying an identifier of the course in the address line, and there we go, the data for the third course has been shown on this page. So in this lesson we have started fetching data for courses from the database. Let's continue development in the next lesson.